A warm welcome to all of you. Today I will be talking about electromagnetic interference in RF circuits, which is the fifth module of the course of RF design of the University of Mumbai. So, why do we care about EMI? Have we noticed it in our lives? Yes, we have. If you have noticed, when we place our mobile phones near the screens of the computer during times when we have an incoming call or an incoming SMS, the screen of the monitor you will notice that there is certain amount of jitter, there's some disturbance, which is the proof of electromagnetic interference. That is, the screen is not able to function well uh, as per its specifications in the presence of the mobile signals around it. So, when mobile signals are of certain intensity, it hampers the performance of your screen. Also, in medical devices like pacemakers, if you consider either dual or single chamber pacemakers, which are currently being implanted in an increasing number of various indications all around the world, although pacemakers are very sophisticated and technically challenging devices, they may be affected by many internal and external factors. Patients with pacemakers need to be regularly and carefully evaluated for any source of environmental factors that might interfere with pacemaker functions. Patients who are dependent on pacemakers are especially at increased risk for developing adverse effects in case of an electromagnetic interference. Also, lightning strikes could pose EMI issues. So, if you take a case of buried high pressure energy pipeline, direct lightning strikes in the vicinity of such buried high pressure energy pipeline can cause damages to pipe coatings or to the metal pipe. This damage sometimes leads to explosions which may cause loss of consignments. This is also a risk to pipeline integrity and safety of the people working on the pipeline. Hence, lightning induced electromagnetic interference on buried energy pipeline is a matter of serious concern. To protect buried metallic energy pipeline from the effects of direct lightning strikes near the pipeline to the ground, it is necessary to have comprehensive information about the lightning currents and the radiated electromagnetic fields. Hence, there is a need to understand and measure and quantify the electromagnetic interferences which are induced by such events. So, in an incident where there was a launching exercise for Saturn V, in an incident it was noted that very low level signals were detected somewhere in the KSC vicinity. This signal was not always present, and possibly it was due to the signal mixing, which was then considered to be and neglected in the previous case. But then it was noted that this signal was hampering the functioning of the units. So all the radio stations and mobile transmitters in the area were investigated and no spurious signals were detected. The KSC and MSFC EMC personnel worked all night trying to solve the problem. At one point, soon after the signal suddenly stopped, one of the MSFC EMC personnel stepped outside the small trailer used to house the test equipment and noticed that it was the searchlights surrounding the vehicle which had turned off, and hence the low detected signal was now missing. On his request, they were turned on again, and the unwanted signal reappeared. Further investigation revealed the searchlights were carbon arc lamps that produced a broadband radio frequency RF signal, and the lamp reflectors beamed the signal directly to the range safety antennas on the vehicle. So, in another case where the AH-64 Apache attack helicopter was designed primarily as an airborne anti tank weapon to provide quick strike capability against tanks and armed vehicles, the Apache is essentially an electronic device with multiple electric and electronic systems that control navigating and fighting abilities. During early missions, pilots complained that the high RF signals interfered with electronics. In one case, EMI triggered an overspeed condition that could have resulted in double engine failure. Subsequent reports showed that the aircraft was susceptible to low level emitters such as commercial microwave television and airport and missile radar. At one point, the Army concluded that the Apache should not be used on aircraft carriers. After determining that the source of unwanted signals was coupling in the input output cables, the shielding of those cables was redesigned, but not before many costly aircraft were built with EMI deficiencies. So, this was kind of a big loss for a simple shielding problem which could have been tackled earlier. In electronic warfare, where aerial combat units are used, there are issues surrounding electromagnetic interferences uh, causes a lot of problems for those aerial combat equipments, and at times there is a loss of the units, the GPS units to these units, the combat units, resulting in a small unmanned aerial systems that cannot reliably fly. So this also could be a problem in electronic warfare. So they need to be tested, they need to be measured, and if there are issues, they have to be tackled, understanding the quantified units of interferences. Another case was of apnea monitors. There was a problem in the earlier apnea monitors where it erroneously indicated respiration for some kind of low levels of EMI which were detected. Now, a physician at a major university hospital reported that apnea monitors would not work in some surrounding neighborhoods. It all depend upon what neighborhood you would be using it. So a unit cannot be working in that manner. It has to be working in all kinds of environments. Prolonged sleep apnea is detrimental to adults and can be fatal to infants. So other reports of monitor failures prompted the FDA to conduct tests. The conclusion that low levels of EMI detected by commercial apnea monitors could erroneously indicate respiration, and they had to recall all those monitors. Another issue where we can understand of EMI problem is runaway wheelchairs. Runaway wheelchairs, some powered wheelchairs experience erratic, unintentional movements when police, fire, or some broadband transmitters were activated nearby. These movements included sudden starts that caused wheelchairs to drive off curbs or piers. Although no fatal injuries have been reported, FDA has ordered manufacturers of motorized wheelchairs to shield them from EMI and to educate users on the potential EMI hazards. Okay, so here in this screen, on this slide, you can see on your screen uh, three main concerns regarding the EMI. The role of cables are conceptualized in the figure. The first one is the radiated emission antennae, which takes place from cables. The second is the radiated susceptibility antenna that is marked because what happens is between the cables there is going to be pickup due to the susceptibility to that radiation. Third is cable to cable or crosstalk couplers. Usually, whatever is done to harden a cable against radiated emission, it will also work in reverse for controlling EMI radiated susceptibility. The reason for this is usually when differential mode radiated emission or susceptibility is the failure mode, twisting leads and shielding cables reduces EMI. If the failure mechanism is due to common mode currents, which we'll be talking about, so if it is due to common mode currents circulating in the cable, twisting leads and has essentially no effect on the relationship between each conductor and the common mode reference. Cable shields may help or aggravate EMI depending upon the value of the transfer impedance of the cable shield. Transfer impedance is a figure of merit of the quality of cable shield performance defined as the ratio of coupled voltage to surface current in per meter basis. So here this is an example where you can see how cables are responsible for EMI. A good cable shield will have a low transfer impedance. The effectiveness of the shield also depends on whether or not the shield is terminated, and if so, how it is terminated. Connectors usually are needed to terminate cables. When no cable shields or connector filters or absorbers are used, connectors play essentially no role in controlling EMI. The influence of connector types, however, can play a major role in the control of EMI above a few megahertz. This applies especially when connectors must terminate a cable shield and or contain lossy ferrites or filter pins. Connectors and cables should be viewed as a system to cost effectively control EMI rather than to consider the role of each separately, even though each offers specific interference control opportunities. So, what is the difference between EMI and EMC? So, the definitions here are there before you. EMI is the interference caused by electromagnetic disturbance, which affects the performance of a device. Sources of EMI can be environmental, so we'll be looking at sources very soon in the subsequent slides, such as electrical storms, solar radiations, but more usually will be another electronic device or electrical system if the interference is in the radio frequency spectrum. It is also known as radio frequency interference or RFI. Electromagnetic compatibility and interference are extremely important design considerations. Failing to consider them in the early stages of product development can result in time consuming and costly need to redesign the product at a later stage to meet EMC EMI specification tests and prevent product failure or safety risk. If a product has to be redesigned, it can be prohibitively expensive and result in delays to markets and a loss in consumer confidence. Bad product design would be when earthing, filtering, and shielding have not been considered, the result of which would include product failure during test and in the real world would mean that the product would be unreliable and not work and will not work as intended. Good product design that incorporates the applications of basic EMC principles such as effective shielding, earthing, filtering will simultaneously improve electromagnetic immunity and reduce electromagnetic emissions. So, EMC is a measure while EMI is interference. So, EMC will help in understanding and quantifying EMI. So, it is a measure of a device ability to operate as intended in its shared operating environment while at the same time not affecting the ability of other equipment within the same environment to operate as intended. So, if EMC is the way it is measured, the EMI is measured, there are certain standards which have to be met. All electrical and electronic devices or installations influence each other when either interconnected or placed in close proximity. This can be seen as interference between your television or radio, for example, and a nearby washing machine or overhead power line. EMC requirements are designed to keep these side effects under reasonable control. Similarly, in cars, many elements are managed electronically and any interference could cause them to malfunction. Therefore, it is important to evaluate these systems for quality and functional safety with the help of EMC regulations. Internationally, the EMC standards have been developed for two purposes. Firstly, they regulate the electromagnetic emissions from a piece of equipment, and secondly, they ensure the immunity of that equipment to electromagnetic interference. So, there are set of standards. So, this definition, the first one, is taken from IEC 60050-161. So, it's the ability of an equipment or system to function satisfactorily. So, there are standards which have been set, and every device has to meet those standards. And in this slide, there are some standards which are listed, and we'll be talking about it in the forthcoming module, the sixth module. It has been taken from the link which is present at the bottom of the slide. So, what are the sources of EMI? So, we can broadly classify them into two categories, the natural and the man made. So, the natural, the listing goes like this: the terrestrial source, the precipitation, static, atmospheric noise, extraterrestrial noise, solar radiation, cosmic noise, sky background noise. And while the man made are is a list which goes endless. Few of them are listed over here. Basically, all electronic and electrical devices which are created by man will interfere. So this is the slide which represents the sources of EMI. So the quantification of EMI and EMC is EMI, rather, the quantification of EMI speaks about measurement techniques basically categorized into two major broad categories. The one is the emission testing and immunity testing. So, this is basically EMC, the electromagnetic compatibility of the device. So, the emission testing will include the radiated emission testing, conducted emission testing, while the immunity testing would involve using continuous sources and analyzing various factors and using the transient sources and analyzing. So this is how the quantification of EMI in any device is done. We'll be talking about this in detail. So, EMC testing routines uh, are specific test routines are followed, and they can be done either as compliance testing, that is by strictly following the instructions mentioned in the authorized standards, or pre-compliance testing, that is developing newer in-house techniques. The testbeds of all pre-compliance setups must imitate the compliance test setup as closely as possible in terms of hardware, software, and technique used. There are three main components that aid in the occurrence of EMI, and they are emitter, that is the source that acts as the source of unwanted interferences, receiver, that is the susceptor that reacts to these interferences, and a coupling channel that transports the interference from the source to the receiver. If the coupling channel is conducting in nature, then EMI is said to have occurred due to conducted emission. If the coupling channel is of radiating type, then radiated emission takes place. These components could be different systems leading to inter-system EMI, or they could be different subsystems of a bigger system leading to intra-system EMI. Based on the above categories, EMI measurements, that is EMI tests, are categorized as shown in the figure here, that is emission testing and immunity testing. So, EMC testing routines will follow majorly testing of magnetic fields, voltage drops due to brownout or other power interruption, electromagnetic surges due to lightning strike, conducted and radiated electromagnetic noise, electrostatic discharges associated with static electricity, past transients caused by electrical switches, motors and relays, fluorescent lamps, etc. So, thank you very much. We will meet again with detailed explanation of the rest of the topics.